Hi everyone, welcome to the FALC demo for January 2021. This month we have an exciting and very interesting artist and we have the privilege of having Raja Guha Thakurta as a demoing artist for us. So why his profile is interesting is that he is a scientist by profession. So he's an astrophysicist and he is a chair at UC Santa Cruz. While he's really researching on astrophysics, he does amazing portraiture, and he has his very unique style. I'm sure many of you wouldn't have seen it in portraits. So he's going to show 4 of his styles here as a demo. Actually, he's going to show 4 of his styles, and also 2 of them he's going to show us as a demo. So it's going to be very interesting. Apart from portraiture, Raja also does figurative with oil painting. He has shared some of his work with me, which we are going to show as we go, and he's going to share what is the inspiration of creating them. Raja has won many awards. He was also a member of FALC earlier, I think in the 2007, and he won the best of the show, and also he's won many other awards in the Bay Area. I wish we can get Raja as our member, but he said he's very busy, but hopefully he joins our team soon. So this year we are going to start with a very interesting demo, and I'm sure you're all going to enjoy. With that, I hand over to Raja. Over to you, Raja. So we are eagerly waiting for your demo.
Thank you very much. It's a privilege to come back to FALC. I had such a good time. The fellowship with artists with FALC was one of the high points of being an artist in the Bay Area. And I am blown away by the quality of art demos you've had in the past. So be prepared to lower your expectations for this one. I am really honored to be in the company of your previous art demo folks. And so I'll do my best. I'll say a little bit about my artistic journey first. I'll show a few pieces by screen share and talk about the techniques and stories behind them. Then I'll work on one piece for a little while. And then I'll go back to talking about a few pieces, and I'll work on a second piece. The 2 pieces I'll work on today are in somewhat different styles of portraiture. The second one I'll work on, I've saved it for the very end because I haven't tried that style before. So if it fails miserably, I can just hang up the Zoom call. So it's all very strategic. Okay, again, thank you for giving me this opportunity. I'm going to jump right in. Let me see if I can share my screen. Let's see what the best way is to do that. Give me a moment, please. All right, let's see if this works. You should be able to see a PowerPoint slide deck. And let's see if I can minimize this. There we go. All right. So I thought I'd talk about my artistic journey for just a couple of minutes. I am from a family of artists, and I thought I'd talk about that. Before I show you pictures of the artists in my family and talk about them a little bit, there came a point in my youth, it was between school and college, that I had to make a choice. I had to make a choice about what I was going to study in college. In school, I had chosen the science stream, I guess, in class 9. So 9, 10, 11, and 12 was focusing on the sciences. But up to that point, and even beyond class 9, I was very fond of art. So even though I wasn't formally taking an art class, I would spend time in the art class, and I knew the art teachers over the years. So I managed to combine science and art all the way through school, took part in school art exhibitions. But really at college, it came to a choice. And the first college I went to pick up an application was a paper application back in the day, for those of you who are old enough to remember. There was no such thing as the web. I went to the Government Art College in Calcutta, which is located right next to the Indian Museum on Chowringhee Road. And I picked up a paper brochure from the art college, proudly brought that home, showed it off to my parents. Now, if my parents were dying inside from my decision, they didn't show it. You know, they were very supportive. The person who talked me out of applying to art college was someone whose art I emulated, my maternal grandmother. She said, you know, you're good at science. You should do science as a profession, do art as a hobby. I don't know, I'll never know whether she was right, because I haven't tried doing art as a profession, science as a hobby. She said, you know, that's not possible. You can't do that. So do it this way. I followed her advice and chose science over art. But I do want to say that when I'm thinking about a science project now, when I'm doing research versus when I'm doing art as a hobby, there are a lot of parallels between the two processes. You know, you come up with an idea that you're trying to turn into a finished product. In the case of science, it's a published paper. In the case of art, of course, it's a finished art piece. Concept to finished product. There are lots of stumbling blocks along the way. You try things that don't work. You learn from your mistakes. You learn from failure. Those things are very common between art and science. You have to use creativity. You have to use your technical skills. You want to play to your strengths, whether it's a science project or an art project. You want to use a technique that you're good at. You want to play to your strengths in the sense if you have raw materials or if you have an idea that nobody else has come up with, you want to play to those strengths. There's no sense in running down a road where somebody else is already running down that road and they're miles ahead of you, right? You do that in science and art. You choose wisely so that you can make a mark. You also, in my case, I use a lot of detail. I pay a lot of attention to detail in both my art and my science. You won't see that in my science right now, but in this demo, hopefully you'll see it in my art. So let me talk about the artists in my family. You know, there's my sister, who's an art historian by profession. She's recently retired, and my mother, who used art as a hobby. Here's my mother's mother, the grandmother who talked me into doing science over art. This is 3 generations, my sister, my mother, and my grandmother in that order. Here's my mother doing the decoration on my sister's wedding day. You can see she did decorative art. This is Alpana. This is on the floor. Here is my mother on her wedding day with her mother, my grandmother there. Here's my grandmother with my sister on her lap. You know, so 2 generations, but with a generation in the middle missing in that photograph. And then 3 generations in this photograph, my sister, my mother, and my sister's daughter, Mrinalini, who's grown up to be a fantastic artist. There's Mrinalini. This is what she looks like now. And my mother herself grew up in a family of artists. So there's my mother in a very stylish fur jacket. There's my mother's mother. And there are 2 of my mother's brothers, my mamas, my uncles, who are very good at art. In fact, my mother's oldest brother, this guy over here, the tall one, he taught me cartooning when I was a kid. And my mother would scold him saying, don't teach him how to draw cartoons before he can draw realistic portraits. So I was strongly influenced by them. My other uncle, the shorter one, the younger one, the shorter one in this picture, he had amazing calligraphy. And I really got inspired by his calligraphy. And one of my other cousins taught me calligraphy as well. I noticed she and her husband are on this call as well. So shout out to them. Now, these people are all on my mother's side of the family. On my father's side of the family, here is my cousin in the middle with her daughter and her husband. And all 3 of them are amazing, absolutely amazing artists. Their style of decorative art is very similar to my mother's style of decorative art. You'll see some resemblances there. All right. So I was influenced by other artists as well. In particular, there was an artist who lived in our apartment complex, and she taught me some of the basics of oil painting. Her name is Shanu Lahiri. She was a nationally renowned artist. She did abstract art. You see some of her art in the background. And the other 3 artist influence I had growing up names you might recognize more easily. One of them is Michelangelo. I was absolutely amazed by his painting, his realism, his sculpture, absolutely amazed by it. Salvador Dali, whose precision, attention to detail, whose technical skills, like Michelangelo, are absolutely amazing. Of course, he did surrealism. And finally, Leonardo da Vinci. There's a self-portrait on the right and the famous La Gioconda, or Mona Lisa, on the left. And of course, what was absolutely inspiring about Da Vinci was he managed to be a scientist, an engineer, an inventor, and a world-famous artist all at the same time. So that was absolutely inspiring for me. I said I would talk about 4 styles of portraiture today. These are the 4 styles I'm going to talk about. These are styles I'm experimenting with. One of them is just plain portraiture. I'll say a little bit more about that. I'll show some examples of that. And then I started to play with putting context into portraits, putting in context around by using words, secondary images, symbols, etc. Then I started a 3rd style, and I'll show off that as well. I'll show the 3rd style after I've demoed the 2nd style. And then very recently, I've been starting to play with flat shades of gray and patterns. So just keep this in mind, these 4 styles. I'm going to demo the 2nd and 4th styles, but I'm not going to say very much more about them for now. But you'll see more detail once I actually show off pieces in each of these styles. Again, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1 is plain portraits. 2 is contextualized portrait, contextualized with the help of images, words, symbols. In the 3rd, I use substrates. What I mean by that is there's a background I use, a very deliberate background, and I use that background for shading. And finally, flat shades of gray. That's the last style that I'm experimenting with right now, quite literally right now. Okay, so with this, I'm going to show off a few styles of, a few kinds of painting. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen for a second and I'll come back on, okay? In the meantime, I forgot to say this at the beginning. Please keep asking questions if anything comes up. Anything takes your fancy, you want to ask a question, please be my guest. This is meant, hopefully this is meant to be sort of an interactive kind of show that where I respond to your interests. Okay, let me see what I have here. There we go. Okay. Pardon me while I pick out. So what I'm going to do in this next piece is I'm going to show off 4 particular drawings. I'm going to see if I can fill my screen with that so that you can see it as we go. Oops, sorry. I'm being a little klutzy here with my screen share. My apologies. All right, you can see my screen. I assume you can see this. I'm just showing here. I'm going to go full screen with this. Some of you may recognize him. This is a movie director, famous movie director, world-famous movie director named Satyajit Ray. I grew up in the same city where he worked, was famous. This is what I would call a plain portrait. It's, there's no, I'm not doing anything for context. It's an actual, it's based on a photograph. A very famous photographer, Nimai Ghosh, took this photograph. I was commissioned to turn that into a portrait and for a particular collection at UCSC. And, the story about this is he had a heart attack, but, he was used to smoking, but his pipe didn't have tobacco in it. It was there as a matter of habit. Okay, so you can see this texture in the portrait. You can see this texture. I was really focused on the texture of his skin, his hair, the different texture of the starched shirt he was wearing, the texture of the wristband, the texture of the tobacco, the pipe that normally carried tobacco. So I was very focused on texture in this particular one. Let me show you a different one. Here's a portrait now, not in pencil, but in oil. This is one that Janki referred to earlier. Tara was one of the subjects of this. My wife Mila was the other subject. And this was painted, this is called Smiling Eyes because you can try covering the nose and mouth of each of the two subjects. And from their eyes, you can tell that they're smiling. So that's, my wife came up with this name. And here, this is, again, it's a plain portrait. I'm, of course, using the colors in the background. The colors in the background represent our garden, but it's an out of focus garden because I took this photograph and of course my daughter and wife were in focus and the garden was out of focus. So that's what that, that crisscross background represents. I was particularly attracted to the lighting in this photo. I took this photograph, but I was particularly attracted to the lighting. I don't know if you can see my cursor. Can you see my cursor?
Yeah, we can see.
Okay, so the lighting of my wife's left ear, this part of the side of the face near the eye, I like the way the lighting came in, the light comes in there. I love the colors it's making in my daughter's hair. When I did this painting in 2007, she said, "Dad, I don't have all these colors in my hair." But somehow I could see all these colors in her hair, with the light filtering through. I'm also attracted to, in this photograph, in this painting, the thing I'm also attracted to is the jewelry, the gold, or they're not real gold, but gold-plated earrings. How do you paint gold when you don't have gold paint? You use yellow, white, and some dark colors to create the impression of gold. So I was attracted to that. I'll show you one more portrait next, plain portrait. And by the way, this portrait of my wife, I had painted an oil portrait of hers in 1982 when we were first dating. And I guess the start of my dating her also meant the start of a very busy phase in my life. And for 25 years, I didn't paint in oils. This was the next painting 25 years later, after a 25-year gap. The 25-year gap is bookended by two paintings of my wife, one before we got married and one after. And the second time there was a little girl on her shoulder. So
just on the forehead, you have a nice color. So I was wondering how you got that. So,
there's actually color throughout her face, and I have to say this is only a photograph of the oil. If you look at the original, there's a little bit more color in both of their faces.
Mm-hmm.
There's a little bit of orange on her forehead, as you say, but there's actually orange on her throat, on her chin. There's colors all over. There's some purples in her hair.
I should add, this one was a best of show.
Oh, this was the best of show? Okay,
yes.
Nice. Yeah, it is. Okay, very nice.
So the light in this and the texture attracted me. There's other subtle things like, because my wife is leaning a certain way, the center, the lowest point of gravity of this necklace isn't in the center line here. You'll notice that. And this was, of course, in the photograph. In the photograph, she's looking right at the camera. And I wanted to make it look more candid, so I had her look away from the camera in the painting. I, of course, also whitened and straightened their teeth. Those are all, free dental job is what you get when your husband or dad is the artist.
Raja, I have a question.
Yes, please.
Do you trace your photographs or do you freehand them and then do the coloring in?
In this case, I did a freehand. Let me address that question head on because I can show you something that demonstrates that. Sorry. Just give me 1 second to pull that up. Thank you for that question. There's the photograph on which the painting is based. You can see in the photograph there, my wife's part of her head and hair is cut off, so I had to fill that in. You can see she's looking at the camera. This is the sketch I did on canvas before I started the painting. This was
amazing, amazing.
It's freehanded. Look, the reason I have this photograph is because I hadn't painted in oil for 25 years. And with the wonderful friends I have around me, they said, look, this is a lovely sketch, but you're going to completely ruin it when you start painting in oil, so you better take a photograph. That's why I have this photograph. But this is the photograph. This is the sketch on canvas and a photograph of that sketch on canvas.
Raja, may I ask you a question?
Yes, please go ahead.
This sketch, do you use, did you use graphite pencil for the sketch?
No, I use a number 2 pencil. I'm an academic. I'm used to SAT and GRE exams, so I just use a number 2 pencil. I use a mechanical pencil, actually.
What I've heard is that, so do you put a fixative before you add color, or because I've heard that graphite kind of.
Yeah, graphite really muddies up things. So I use, I actually erase most of the pencil drawing before I put down oil. Okay. So it's just to make sure I've got resemblance. Then I erase in stages as I'm about to paint.
Okay.
Okay, so moving on. I'm going to show one more. This is of my aunt, my father's sister. Again, full screen. And this was a photograph that's been in our family. This is a photograph taken in 1925 when my aunt was 19 years old, I believe. And she had been widowed. That's why she's wearing a white sari. But I titled this Inner Light, because even though the light must have been shining on her face from the outside, knowing who she was as a person, I like to believe that the light was shining from the inside out. So this is, again, my father's sister. She was older than my father. And the photograph is beautiful. She was even more beautiful. And I tried to copy that photograph.
What paper did you use for this, and what size?
This is fairly small. This is, I believe, 10 by 14. Mm-hmm. And it's a fairly small piece. It was fairly fine-grained paper. You're asking me technical questions that I have no idea about. I walk into an art store, find the, find a notepad that looks good and walk off. I don't know these technical things, but I know it was relatively fine-grained because I had no difficulty putting down very fine shading on it. You'll notice the white sari is embroidered. There's a little floral pattern here. There's another floral pattern up here. Yep, go ahead, please. Another question. Was there another question? No, okay. So these three that I showed you are plain portraits. I'm about to show you a contextualized one. This is one of my father's younger brother. So this is my granduncle, my father's uncle. So her uncle as well, since she's my aunt. So their uncle became a monk at a very early age, young age, decided to go into a religious life. And I wanted to show you a portrait I did of his. Again, this is based on a photograph that we have in the family. And what I have is something where I've enhanced the photograph. I've enhanced it to add context. You can perhaps see the hint of an Om symbol. Can you see that?
Oh, yes.
So that Om is meant to look as though it's embossed into the piece of paper. And what I did, that's just sleight of hand. It's just every time I had to shade across that boundary, I made sure there was some discontinuity in shading, light to dark or dark to light. So it looks like it's embossed. It's actually not. It's a flat piece of paper. That's all it is. And so that's the Om in the background. I decided to add some writing. My granduncle was born in what is now Bangladesh. So there's some writing about the places he lived in, the name he had before he joined the Ramakrishna Mission and Order. The two ashrams he set up in the US are marked over here, Cohasset and La Crescenta. My uncle was the youngest and last disciple, I believe, of the 13th disciple of Swami Vivekananda, whose image you see hidden in the lower right here. I don't know if you can see that. And Vivekananda's teacher was Thakur Ramakrishna. His image is also not so hidden, but right there in the drawing. So this is when I started to experiment with adding additional images, text, in this case, a symbol, to contextualize my granduncle's portrait.
Raja, how many hours does this take approximately? A painting
Something this
like
detailed,
that?
40 to 50 hours of work,
Oh,
No.
okay. Thank you.
spread out over years typically.
Minor.
Yep.
Cat on fire.
I'm sorry. Was there another question?
Not for, I think, yeah, I think it's not for this meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, okay. Fine.
One more. This is also, so this is in style 2, which is a contextualized portrait, okay? Here's another one. This is not a traditional portrait, right? Because you can't see the face. This is a figure drawing of a little girl named Avery, who is one of my former colleagues. My colleague is retired now, but his granddaughter. And what he had done is he had put a bronze statue in his garden, a bronze statue of a girl reading a book. You can see the statue of the girl, the book, the forearm of the statue, the skirt of the statue, the folded leg of the statue, the other foot, the sole of the foot, other foot of the statue. Again, you can see a little bit of the leg, the foot. So that texture is about the bronze statue. He was waiting for the moment when his granddaughter would lean down to see what was written in the book. But of course, the book is made of bronze. So, but he was waiting for that moment, and he took a photograph right at that moment. And when I saw the photograph in his office, he had taken the photograph. I said, you know, he had wanted me to do a commissioned portrait. I said, I'm going to use this photograph as my photo reference. I was really attracted to texture. You can see her hair has rich texture. Different from the hair of the statue, of course, and the statue has different texture from, you know, Avery's skin, her top, her taffeta skirt, you know, the textures of the garden, the leaves. And I deliberately left in the grid. In this case, I didn't do completely free drawing. I used a grid to get my dimensions right. And I deliberately left the grid in. Actually, I'd erased the grid. I added it back on in the outskirts so that it doesn't interfere with the main part of the portrait. And I'll tell you why I added the grid. But if you look closely, you'll see that there's a dog in the lower left of the portrait. Do you see that?
Mhm.
Okay, 2 eyes, the snout and the ear. Well, what happened was my colleague Terry, he said that we're going to surprise Avery with this portrait. So I want you to hide some of the favorite things from her childhood in the portrait. So she loved this dog. This dog, she loved this this soft toy, this bunny rabbit. Can you see this bunny rabbit with the floppy ears, the eyes, and the little belly here? That's a bunny rabbit. Do you see that? That's a soft toy.
Yep.
And then she loves horses. So there's a horse hidden here. That's a little harder to see. That's the eye of the horse right there. This is one of its pointed ears. This is the other pointed ear. This is the bridle. This is the snout right there. The horse is looking to your right as you face the picture. I don't know if you can see it. So it's right there as a little horse. So again, hidden images. And you know, this again, in consultation with my wife, this piece is called An Unfinished Story. Because when a child tries to read a book that's cast in bronze, she's not going to finish that story. It's an unfinished story in that sense. Because it's unfinished, and I wanted to stick to that, I put back in the grid that I had used that I would normally remove before finishing. So I wanted to leave it unfinished. And of course, a child is an unfinished story of an adult. So that's what
What is that item in the foreground?
that is the metal cover of a lamp in the garden. That's the shiny metal lampshade of a lamp in the garden. There's bird poop on here as well. That's what those white spots are, but it's the shiny metal surface of a lamp.
It looks like you've done this on a graph paper, right?
I created that grid myself.
Oh, is it?
I created that grid so I could get proportions right as an enlargement scheme.
Fine. I was wondering how is it possible to do from a graph paper?
No, that's not your imagination. It's there. It's actually there. All right.
Brilliant work.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. And thank you for asking questions.
Time for us to really see everything here, I think, in detail.
So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I'm actually going to go to a different view here.
Raja, can I ask you
course,
one
please.
more picture where you have written
Names.
Words.
Yes.
I will show
Name.
that.
Would like
I
to
haven't
see that.
forgotten that.
Yes.
That's one of the styles.
That's one of the styles. That's exactly right. Now, what do you see right now? If you'd stop pinning me, and if you
Yeah,
could
sure.
pin one of the other pieces, let's see
Let me
which
do
one
that.
is that.
Mm,
One that says Mila, probably.
Somebody's typing very hard.
Taking notes on
Yeah,
this
yeah,
demo.
yeah.
I think Mila's.
Yes, I've pinned Mila now.
Okay.
Thanks, Mila.
Do you see? You should see a portion of my drawing if you go to that one. Let me see if I can.
I think
Because I'm using an iPad, basically. I'm using my wife's account on an iPad to, let me see if I can bring this up somehow.
yeah, we can see a portion of it.
Yeah, just give me yeah, if you could pin that one, please, that would be great.
Yeah, I've pinned that. Everybody can see this, right? The drawing.
So this is the portrait I'm doing right now.
What am I supposed to look at?
Oops, I'm sorry. Let me see.
Mila, I think we don't see the video now.
Sorry, just a moment. Just a moment. I've done something bad here. Let me go back to my. Are you able to pin it again, please?
Yes, I think we are in the right pin.
Okay.
Yeah, we're able to see the drawing now.
Okay, so this is the drawing I'm working on. And it's based on, this is a portrait of this girl here. Okay. And what I'm doing is oops, it keeps switching to me somehow.
Yeah, but
I don't see. I don't see no
I
drawing.
think you're in the speaker view, so that's why it shows. But
Oh, I see. Can you pin Mila Bhattacharya by any chance?
yeah, I've done pinning, so everybody's seeing only the drawing, right? Not the.
No,
I don't think so.
haven't seen
I don't
it
think
yet.
so.
I unpinned him and now I see you instead.
Yeah, I don't think it's pinned
Okay,
right
so
now.
did we lose the pin again? Okay, let me do it again. Now is everyone seeing?
No, it's not pinned for me.
No, we can't see other than Raj and you, Shubha. We can't see anything else.
Yeah, you'd have to pin Mila Bhattacharya.
Yeah, I thought I did the same. Okay.
I don't have permission to do that. Oh,
Yeah,
there we
Okay.
go. Now it
Okay,
is.
it's okay.
Now it is.
Now
Okay.
we can see.
Now we can see something.
So what you're supposed to see, first of all, is I am drawing this girl here. You're seeing a photograph of a girl. That's my photo reference. And what I'm drawing is, what I'm drawing are her eyes. I'm going to hold my hand steady so you can see this. And one of the cool things about the photograph is I have a digital version of the photograph. In the digital version, you can quite literally see the room she's in her eyes. In the reflection in her eyes, you can see what's in front of her. And I know you can't see that in this, in what I'm holding up, and I can't see that in my drawing either. But I just wanted to show you that in this particular instance, I am trying to use, really focus on her hair. You could see the details of her hair. This is something I'm working on right now. So I'm going to do a little piece of this drawing right now, if that's okay. And I will share my, I've already shared a digital photo of Kriti in the list of photographs I sent out to the group. So I'm going to be working on a small piece of this. But what I wanted to show you is around this portrait, if I step away, you'll notice that around this girl's portrait are other faces. There's a picture of her dog right there that I've drawn. It's half shaded, half line drawing. She's very fond of animals. In fact, this is a mandrill photo that her mom sent me. That's one of her favorite photos. This is an author she likes a lot, and that's the name of his book, Man's Search for Meaning. So I'm going to work on this piece for a little bit now, if that's okay. I'm going to work on some of the shading in this area, right around her throat. Let me see, sorry. Oops, I have to make sure this is positioned correctly. There we go. And what I wanted to do is show you what I am about to do by way of shading. And what the photo reference I'm using is one I've shared with the group. And I can, how else can I share it?
Okay. You have shared it to me. Do you want me to bring that up? Share that?
That would be great. That would be great. I could also bring it up temporarily on this screen. I could do that. Why don't I do that?
Spotlight. Yeah, maybe I could.
I could also share my screen. It's the picture, the third picture on the top row.
Yeah. One second. Let me share something. 1 second. Yeah. You see my share?
Yep.
Yes.
Then you can't see me draw.
Yeah.
So that's why I didn't know how to deal with this because
Oh, yeah.
you can either do, I could either do one or the other.
1 second. How we can?
I have a suggestion.
Yeah.
I have a suggestion. You can use the cell phone and put it next to it with that photo.
For me, you're saying?
Yeah.
I can do better than that. I can make it my background.
I was thinking if you can make it as a virtual background for.
I can make it my virtual background. Why don't I do that?
Yeah.
Take me a
And
second.
I can spotlight both.
We're really using technology here.
Yeah. Yeah, if you can make that as a virtual background for yours, then we can see both. Yes.
You could see her there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what I'm doing now is, if you, I guess, if you look at her shoulders, you'll notice that on her shoulders is the fabric of the material that the top is made of. You know, it's some kind of crocheted material, right? I'm not an expert, but can you see that?
Yes.
And what you should be seeing in the main zoom should be my attempt to draw that in pencil on her left shoulder. I'm about to do similar shading on the right shoulder, which is what I was hoping we could, that I would demo.
Raja, what kind of pencil you are using?
Number 2 pencil, mechanical.
Okay.
The advantage of mechanical is I don't have to sharpen it. And that way it is always, you know, always the same. The lead is always the same thickness.
Thank you.
So you can see, yeah, sorry, go ahead.
You said what eraser you are using?
I'm using a very old eraser, piece of an eraser, Staedtler, I guess. What's left of it.
Don't use the soft one.
Not particularly soft, no. My daughter once got me an eraser that was shaped in the shape of a pencil. It was a tapered eraser. I absolutely loved that. That was great. But I've gone ahead and lost that. So she's on the call, so she knows what to get me for Father's Day. So one of the things is I'm doing very subtle, very light shading. You can see that probably. I don't know if you can.
Yeah, we're able to see. Everybody is able to see, right?
Yes.
You know, why is it so light? Because the pencil is basically resting on the page by its own weight. You know, I'm literally, if I let it go, it's resting on its own weight. It's hardly any weight at all as I'm putting this down. I don't know if you're seeing any detail, but unfortunately the resolution seems to be quite low on this camera somehow. I don't know why. Basically, I'm in the part of the portrait where I want to go from realistic shading to line drawing. And I am making the transition from one to the other. And one place where you can see it is on the finished side. You'll see that near the top of the near the shoulder, it's got full shading around here. And then as you march down, it becomes a line drawing. Do you see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
So it's a transition I'm trying to make so that it's not all full shading. I want an elegant way to taper it off from realism to more line drawing, more a cartoon style drawing, in keeping with some of the peripheral images that are over here. The peripheral image is a line drawing. It's got a little bit of shading, but it's not all shading. Or this portrait of the mandrill, there's some shading, but some of it is line drawing. For the dog, his name is Sawyer, by the way. For the dog, half the snout is shaded, half of it is not. You can see that. One of the eyes is shaded, the other one is a line drawing. Okay. And this dog, by the way, is this young woman's dog. So it's no coincidence that the dog is in the photo. So this is all contextualized, right? This drawing is contextualized by the things that are passions in this young woman's life, right? She's fond of animals. She's very fond of this man's writing. That's why he's featured here. What I'm going to do is, I don't want to spend too much time on this. I want to keep an eye on the clock, of course. I'll do a little bit more shading here. The problem, as Janki knows, and Shubha, you probably know this as well, I'm a very slow artist. You can see that in all this time, I'm better at talking than I am at drawing. So I can talk 19 to the dozen. I can't draw 19 to the dozen. So it takes me a very long time to shade this in. That's why it would probably take each of you half the time or a third of the time to complete something like this. It takes me a long time because I'm slow. I just take forever to finish this piece. And so here too, I'm going to go from this shading. And just because it's crochet, it's not a single line. It's really line segments with gaps in between to represent the stitching of this particular fabric. And you can see that the edge of the fabric is scalloped. You can see that here. It's not a straight edge. And so I'm really attracted to these sorts of details. I'm very, very fond of these sorts of details. That's what makes the drawing attractive. That's what made this image attractive to me. And I'm going to do a bit more shading here. This is the shading of the clavicle. Basically the part of the, I guess, her right. So on your left, that part, the clavicle. You can see both both clavicles here. You can see the shading of that over here. I'm going to move my camera a little bit. You can see the shading of that right there. So that this bone that's here is highlighted, and the skin that's a little bit lower than the bone is picking up some of the shadows. Okay. And you can see the edge of the fabric, the particular pattern of the fabric as. So I'm now going to go back to drawing this part.
I'll ask you a technical question on this.
Yes, please. Yes, please.
Do you use more while you are shading? Do you use more of cross-hatching?
I don't actually. That's a very good question. You'll notice here that, thank you for asking that question. You'll notice over here that all of the shading of this particular drawing is going from upper left to lower right. All of this shading here. I don't know if you can see that here. Can you see the shading over here? It's upper left to lower right, all of that. I'm consistent with that throughout the piece, you know, whether I'm going to show you other parts of this drawing. You'll see the shading definitely goes from upper left to lower right. It's always done that way. Now, of course, to get these strands of hair was not easy. And they were, you can see they are negative drawing, meaning I'm leaving behind thin strands of white to represent the strands of hair that have picked up light. And I am, you know, that part takes more planning. I was particularly attracted to this partly hidden earring. It's partly hidden. You can see the stones set in the metal, but it's partly hidden by the hair. Those are the things that were the both challenging, but also the interesting parts of the portrait for me. Like I say, the eyes and what's reflected in her eyes is absolutely amazing. What I do is I use a digital image, and I use that way I can really zoom in and see detail. But there's something else in this photo that you're probably not seeing right now. Let me see if I can bring it out. And that is, she is wearing a headband. She's wearing a hairband, sorry, not a headband, a hairband. You can see that in this part of the drawing. Can you see that in the photo behind me?
Yeah.
So again, it forces you to look at a photograph in great detail, and it helps to have a high resolution digital version of the photo, so you can really zoom in a long way as you try to pull out these details. For me, these details are what make the painting what it is. Yes, this is a very subtle shading of her, you know, on a very subtle shading on her. But these, you know, while these are hard, it's these other details that I find super interesting and attractive. And those are the things that make it both a challenge, but it's a challenge I relish. You know, it's one of those things. It's the most meaningful part of the picture to me, these sorts of details. So you can see very light shading. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you use the eraser to do lifting?
If necessary, I try to minimize the use of the eraser because it ends up smudging things as well. So one important thing is if you want to lighten something with your eraser, roll over the piece with it so you're not going back and forth, roll over it, and then clean the eraser before you use it again. Because the danger with using an eraser is, you know, it erases stuff from the paper. That lead is sitting on your eraser only to be put back on the paper. So you have to be careful with how you use it.
Tombow eraser might help you with that.
Sorry? A dough eraser.
Tombow eraser.
I see. Look, these are technical things I'm learning today. So this is good. This is a good reason to do demos so you can learn from other artists. So
yeah. Another thing I noticed is you never use blender. Or
no, I don't use a blender. I want people to see I want them to see my pencil strokes.
Yeah, I have one question. That you are using the same pencil for light and dark shade, and I think you are just like using the pressure on the pencil.
That's exactly right. That way I'm controlling only one thing. I don't have to worry about multiple things. I'm a simple person.
Amazing.
All I have to do is control one thing, how much pressure I put on the page. The thickness of the lead doesn't come into play. The type of lead doesn't come into play. It's just how much pressure. It makes it easier.
Yeah, amazing.
Have you ever used a brush?
For oil painting, yes. Yeah. Is that what you meant?
For pencil?
No. Oh, you mean to smear out the lead? No, I've never used it.
So, Raja, in your previous sketch, you had used grit. Did you use grit for this one also?
Yes, I did. I did use a grit for this one.
Okay.
It's mostly erased because the part that I needed the grid for is done. I use the grid to get resemblance. I want to make sure she doesn't look like a Picasso, you know, with two eyes and two different levels. Picasso wanted it that way. That's why he did it that way. But I want mine, I want the resemblance to come through. So I make sure the shading of the eyes, the position of the eyes, nose, mouth, eyebrows, and, you know, the basic shape of the face. Those are the parts that I really rely on the grid for. It doesn't matter if one of these stitches of the embroidery is out of place, right? No one's going to, that won't make it look any less realistic. So, so I use the grid, but I've already erased the grid now because I don't need it anymore. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But keep asking these questions. I am about to, what I'm going to do, I'll tell you my plan for this. Okay, so I'm going to finish the shading on this side, not today, of course. You'd be here for a week if I had to finish the shading here. But I'll do this shading on this side in the same style as the other side. It'll start with detailed shading at the top, and it'll degrade to line drawing near the bottom as we get away from the main part of the portrait. But I've got these three images here. There's going to be two more images in, there's going to be two more images drawn in above this man's head. That's Jane Goodall and Diane Fossey will be here, and Rachel Carson will be here. Rachel Carson is an environmentalist who this young woman who's the subject of this painting really idolized. So I wanted to, or idolize this. So there'll be a Rachel Carson drawing here. There'll be, what's her name? Diane Fossey, Jane Goodall. And the two pieces that, you know, the images that I'm going to use for that, if I may, I can share my screen for just a second. I'll show you the images I plan to use there. So this is Diane Fossey right there. I won't, just her face will be in part of the portrait. I love this image of Jane Goodall. Both of them will be in the drawing, but they'll be as line drawings. And I met Jane Goodall recently, so all the more reason to put her into this portrait. And then Rachel Carson will be at the very bottom there. Again, I probably won't do anything on the microscope or anything like that, just a portion of her, well, her face and just a suggestion of her hair. Not in too much detail, just as a line drawing. It'll be, that will be, if I could stop screen sharing, these three images, the bottom image, the second image, and the first image will be in the left part of the drawing to set context. Yeah, they will be in sort of this lower part of the drawing here. Right, so this is where the Rachel Carson image will be down here. And the Jane Goodall and chimpanzee image will be right where my two fingers are. And then Diane Fossey off to the left, just below the mandrel. And the same style, partly shaded, part line drawing. Okay, so this was not, I'm sorry, this was, I didn't make much progress on the drawing itself, but you get a sense of what I'm trying to achieve with the drawing. Is it okay if I now spend a few minutes talking about a couple of the other styles?
Yes, I think we can move on to the other, because we are eager to see their last style. So
okay, yes, and then go on to the last style. Right, okay. So I'm going to go back to a screen share, if you wouldn't mind going back to sure. Pinning me, please.
Screen share, right? So your screen share, so let me.
Yeah, if you could pin my screen, and then what I'll do is I will, thank you.
Yes.
And just so I don't distract you with these images in the background, I'm just going to go back to a more plain background. What can I do? This one. Okay. So what I want to do next is talk a little bit about a couple more styles, okay? And let's see, where am I? There we go. So I'm going to next talk about all 4 styles in a bit more detail. Then I'll show you examples of the 3rd style and the 4th style, okay? So if you're ready for this, so here are the 4 styles of portraiture. Let me go into a bit more detail about each of them, okay? These are the 4 styles. So let's start with the first, plain. The thing is, I said plain portraits, but they are, in a way, the hardest thing to do because you don't have any gimmicks. You have to get the person's expression. It's a puzzle. You have to build this up. You know, I love playing Scrabble with my sister as a kid. So as a tribute to her, I thought I'd use Scrabble tiles to talk about this. So you have to get the person's expression. You have to make sure the lighting is interesting, and you have to capture that in your drawing. I use textures and patterns a lot. You, of course, have to pay attention to composition, as you do in any kind of drawing. You have to achieve resemblance. It better look like the person you're drawing. And in all of this, you tell a story, right? You tell a story and you use colors. If it's not a black and white, you use. So these are the elements that I've been thinking about when I do plain portraits. When I'm doing contextualized portraits, I add words, symbols, as you saw, the Om symbol, images, in order to provide some context for the main subject of the drawing. Right? In the case of my granduncle, I showed pictures of his gurus. I showed pictures, wrote words of things that are associated with him, provide some context. In this 3rd style, it's called portraits on a substrate, is the name I could come up with. I use words, symbols, images, and patterns to create shading. Okay, I'm going to show you an example of this before I go to the 4th style, okay? All right, what does this look like? Style 3. This is an example of a piece done in that style, okay? I'm not going to go into full screen, but can you see my screen? Can everyone see my screen? Yeah?
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this is my daughter, Tara, and her cousin, so my niece over here. And, you know, they're giving each other a big squeeze, right? I took this photograph, but if you zoom in, you'll notice something. I'm going to zoom in many times, okay? You'll notice that what looks like shading is not really shading. Instead, it's a series of words written down, and you really have to zoom in to read the words. But it's all words. It's a portrait in words, where some words are dark, some words are light. You can see that these letters over here were drawn quite dark. It's part of a word. Parts of letters are light, parts of letters are dark, all to create an impression of shading. You can see, let's see what we can read here. It's written in calligraphy, so it's a little bit harder to read, but I have names of people, names of places. Let's see if I can go to a section where you can actually read the words. 1985, Columbia University, New York University. You can read the words Bleecker Street. You can read somebody's zip code, 91214, not 90210. You can see the word spectrograph and imager, and so on. You can see a whole bunch of things here. But this is all part of a drawing. Now, what are these words, you might ask? And these words are names of people and places. And in a real sense, the words are a roadmap. A roadmap, meaning it's a map of all the places I was in when I did the drawing. Okay, so this section of the drawing was done in New York. That's why there are New York was on my mind. And that's why words and names of places from New York were right there. Now, of course, our memory is cluttered with permanent things and impermanent things. You know, there's names of Madrid metro stations over here, which I don't remember anymore. Those are impermanent memories. But because we were in Madrid when I did this, it's a reminder to me of where each piece of the portrait was done. In a way, it's poking fun at myself for taking a year and a half to finish this piece. During that 1 year and a half, I traveled in all kinds of places. There's a beach in Rio de Janeiro where part of this was done, and you know, if I can find that part of the painting, you'd see Brazil words there, Rio words there. So it's called squeeze because they're giving each other a squeeze, but it's also about how our brains are completely cluttered with facts and numbers, you know, permanent and impermanent memories, and how we manage to find spaces between those words, between those many facts, to make room for the emotions that really matter, higher emotions like love, admiration, respect, which is, you know, shown in this drawing here. So it's about how we squeeze things into our brains, but it's also about how they're giving each other a squeeze. So that's this piece. I'll show you another piece that I've done in this style. Any questions?
I think no questions. Everybody's still looking at it and then thinking, actually, I feel.
And I'll share this if you like. I'll share this. This is a pen and ink. This is not not a pencil sketch, but this too is done. These are two cats. They belong to my former student, and their names are Malcolm and Simon. So Malcolm is right there. M, S for Simon there. But the cats, their fur is made up of words.
Is this any particular name for writing words for this kind? Is this art created by you, or like?
I don't know if there's a particular name because I sort of made this up.
We have not. Has anyone else seen this? Because when I saw Raja's work last time, I thought I've never seen this. Anyone doing this?
I will highlight some points here. When Raja was doing the previous painting, he was in FALC meeting, one of the FALC meeting, and he asked all the members, some of the members, to tell their full names, and we have provided our addresses and names, and it's there in that painting.
In the previous one.
Yes, the previous one.
Yeah, I did some of it at the FALC meeting, so of course it makes sense for FALC members' names to be there, right? So.
So I remember that painting a lot because my name was written in there.
I remember that, Chanki. I remember that. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to show you a third piece done in the same style, but I want to make this a little bit of a surprise. Okay, so that's why I've stopped sharing my screen for a moment. I'm going to do something first to get ready.
So Raja, one quick question.
Yes, please.
Regarding the writings, and also, do you do the shading and then write it, or do it simultaneously? How do you
simultaneously? What I do is, if I know it's going to be a dark part of the drawing where the shading is going to be dark, then I'm not too careful with how dark the letters are. If I know it needs to be part of a very light part of the drawing, then I'm much more careful. Then I want to make sure I write very, very light, so that when I have to erase, I don't have to do much erasing. Okay. So I'm about to show you something that is, okay. So I'm going to share my screen one more time.
Yeah, I think I've seen this. So I'm eager to see what others' reaction would be. Because
Okay, so I'm sharing my screen, and you should see a pattern here, right? So this is, you can see like a floral pattern. This is actually a pattern that is, this is a copy of my mother's drawing. This is done in pencil, by the way. You can see the pencil strokes here if you zoom in enough. But if you zoom out a little bit, I'm going to zoom out a little bit at a time. You can see that there's a Ganesha. Someone pointed out a Ganesha earlier. This is a pencil drawing of a copy of my mother's painting of Ganesha. Okay, so this is a pencil drawing though. But I've used my mother's patterns all over here. You can see, I'll zoom in a little bit more so you can see the details of the pattern. This is more patterns. Can you see all the patterns here? Okay. Now, what are all these patterns doing here? Why is some of it shaded in dark like this? Why are these lines so bold over here? I'll tell you why. I'm going to zoom out. And you can still see patterns, okay? And you're thinking, okay, why these patterns? Why is there shading here? That's because if you zoom out enough, this is a portrait of my mother where I'm using her own drawings, her own patterns. She did decorative art to achieve the impression of shading.
I will clap for this one. So,
Wow. Wow.
Let me zoom out a little bit more.
I wanted to invite him.
This is the whole piece, okay? This is the whole piece. There's a Durga here. And you talked about using an eraser. I did use an eraser here to create the impression of the folds of her sari, okay? Same thing for the fish here. And these are all my mother's drawings. The fish, the Durga, the two birds, the Ganesh, the flower over here. These are all her drawing. But I have taken these patterns and I have deliberately used them to do shading. So this was done in my mother's memory after she passed away. I started this drawing literally the day after she passed away. And it took me a while to finish it. But since she's the inspiration for so much of my art, I thought this would be an appropriate one to show at today's demo. Oops, sorry.
How many hours did this take? This is absolutely incredible.
Again, 40 to 50 hours, but okay, so here's her hand, right? You can see her hand, the fingers of her hand, but they're all patterns. There's no...
Brilliant.
No shading. So this is something I've been experimenting with. Like you've seen, I've done 3 pieces like this. I've shown you all 3.
Wow.
Okay, let me close this. And
please ask a question, Raja.
Yes, please. Of course, of course.
That is, when you are doing your work, doesn't the other part get smudged because of your hand resting on it?
That's an excellent question. I have to pay attention to that. So I worry. I work around it quite literally in 2 ways. I usually start with the center of the drawing, and then I work my way around the periphery. So I have to turn the piece around and draw it that way. The other thing I do is I'll put tracing paper on top, because tracing paper, especially the tracing paper, is secured to the piece. It's not rubbing against the drawing surface. It protects the lead from rubbing off the page. Those are the 2 methods I've used.
Okay. Thank you.
So, sure. So this is a commission piece I did not so long ago with, for a friend of mine. And this is his wife's grandniece. And there was something about it. This is a photograph, based on a photograph her dad took. And you can see her smile just lights up the photograph. And so I've tried to capture that here. And what I was really attracted to here is the texture of her hair. So I really focused a lot on her hair in this picture. And I've called it a winning smile because her smile is just amazing. So this was one of a set of 3 commission pieces. This was one. Her sister had a very different smile. And I want you to see this. Her sister had a very, very different smile. So much so that you can barely tell that she's smiling. So I've called this the Mona Lisa smile because it's not even clear she's smiling, right? And it's a very, very subtle smile. And I noticed after the fact, after my drawing was done, that her hair is in these funny strands. You see this thick strand here. It's not a single strand of hair, it's a set of strands. Another strand here, another few strands. That's because her hair was wet when this photograph was taken. You can see that from the way the hair is stranding here. Do you see the drops of water right there? That's drops of water on her hair. There's another drop right there, another drop of water there. So if I zoom in, you might be able to see it, but there are the drops of water right there. Just a few drops of water caught in the strands of her hair. Here's another 2 water droplets in her hair. So both the subtlety of her expression and the texture of her wet hair was something that was a real challenge and something that was attractive to me as an image, as texture. Sorry, I don't know what this is doing. Oh, there we go. Better. This is one of my favorite pieces I've ever done. So I have to show this. I met Mother Teresa very briefly in 1985, nearly 36 years ago. And this is a painting I did for her while I was at FALC. And this is oil on canvas. And there's something about mother's eyes, right? She's looking into infinity in this photograph. You know, you can sort of see that in the, this is a French press agency photograph, AFP photograph. And I made up the background because I grew up in Calcutta. So I made up the background. It's congested. You can see that. It's multicultural. You can see a church and a mosque. It is polluted. You can see the factory pollution in the sky. And those colors are sort of reflected in her face and near the bottom of the portrait as well. What was a real challenge in this photograph was painting the white cloth. That was a real challenge. It was really difficult because the canvas is white and you have to paint white cloth. How do you make white cloth look real? And what I realized was that was a huge challenge. It's getting the cloth, folds of cloth right here was the biggest technical challenge here. The stiff collar here versus the softer cloth was a real challenge. Now, the reason I did this painting is, of course, because I was inspired by meeting her, but I was actually inspired by something else as well. In, I believe, 1997, the same year Princess Diana died in a car crash. Within a week of that, Mother Teresa passed away after having lived a long, full life. She passed away. And 10 years after that, in 2007, 10 years after her death, they discovered a box of letters that Mother Teresa had received, and letters she had written to very high ups in the Catholic Church. And what emerged was a story that several who were close to her already knew, but most of the world didn't know, is she suffered from depression her whole life, right? So this was something that she battled her inner demons. Am I doing the work? Am I doing the right thing? Has God chosen this path for me? Am I really following God's will? She suffered from doubt her whole life. And what is absolutely amazing, of course, is she's a saint today. She's honored as a saint. But to see the humanity, the human frailty in her, the blemishes that we all carry, our faults, our imperfections, they made her even greater in my eyes than if she didn't have these things. It's one thing to never know fear, but it takes real courage to know fear and overcome it. Or it takes real courage to have doubt and to overcome it, rather than to not have doubt at all. So it's called Shades of White. And again, I credit my wife for coming up with this name, or helping me come up with this name, because in the same way that the shadows in a person's personality, the blemishes, are what make a person real. In the same way, the shadows in this white cloth, it's actually the shades, it's the parts that are not white. It's the shadows that make it look real. So that's why it's called Shades of White. It's one of my favorite pieces. All right.
So Raja, how do we go about, so you said you will show the other demo. We have 6 minutes left. So
yeah, I don't think I should do the second demo if that's okay.
Yeah, because it's not easy to see that. So see the demo. So I think we have seen how you do it with the first demo.
I'll just talk about it. I'll give you a minute talking about it.
Yeah, sure.
If that's okay. And I'll just show this one piece. This is another oil of someone I grew up with, and this is a contextualized portrait with dogs, words, things from my childhood. This is really a portrait about my childhood, but she was a big part of my childhood. And she wrote me letters when I went to graduate school, and her letters would always start with, "I think of you a lot." So I've written those words at the top, "I think of you a lot," because I'm using it reflexively to say I think of her a lot. Anyway, with this, I will finally talk about this last piece, last style, and I'll only take a minute to do that because I know you have something to do as you close. So what I want to do in this last piece, which is something I'm experimenting with still, is I want to take, I've started to do this. I take a portrait, and a portrait has every shade from black to white if you're doing it in pencil. But what I've deliberately done is I said, I'm going to do a black, I'm going to do a white, I'm going to do a 33% gray, and I'm going to do a 66% gray. That is, I'll do a light gray, a dark gray, a black, and a white. I'm going to take all the shades in the drawing and break them down, and every patch of the photograph will be my photo reference. Every patch will be assigned one of these flat colors. I'll define the shape of these patches, but I'm going to take something that's realistic and deliberately make it less realistic by giving it, I'm going to break it down to its essential 4 shades. And I'm also going to take the clothing, and I've started to do this, and I'm going to use 3 or 4 repeating patterns to mark that correspond to different shades. So I'm going to use flat shades, flat shading. That's what I mean by a portrait using flat shading. In this case, 4 shades: white, light gray, dark gray, and black. And I will, once I make a little bit more progress on the piece that I've already started, I can, I'll share it with Janki and Shubha so they can share it as they choose. So thank you. With this, I'll stop sharing my screen. I know you have a little bit of business to finish at the end.
If you could just share what you have done so far.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
I will do that. Just a moment. So for this, we want to switch to the other drawing again, to the other Zoom account. Sorry.
Yeah.
So let me do this. Okay, so you can see, first of all, that I'm doing a picture of this young man. Okay, he was my best friend growing up, and I'm married to his sister. And as we look at this collar, okay, I'm going to show you the corresponding part of the drawing. That collar you saw is this collar right here. The darkest parts are cross-hatched. The middle gray, in this case, I'm doing it in 3 shades. The middle gray is just stripes, and the white, the lightest parts are white. Okay, so again, I'll go back to the photo. You can see the, actually, let me see if I can put both in the same frame. You can see the collar that's over here, the collar that's over here. The dark shading of the neck is starting to come in over here. That's this dark shading over, this is this dark shading over here starting to come in there. I'm doing the background with this interesting pattern of circles. I'll do dark circles here. I'll do white circles, light circles in other parts of the drawing. There are parts of the drawing where the background is somewhat light, like there are parts of the, where is it? Let me see if I can. Yeah, there are parts of the drawing where the background is not jet black. You can see these parts of the drawing, the background is light, so I'll use lighter circles for that. So I'm using a combination of patterns and flat shades to get that piece done. Okay.
Fantastic. Very nice. So yeah, we're looking forward to see the completed picture of this Raja. So
you'll be old and retired by the time.
I will be bugging you to come back to FALC too.
Yes.
Thank you, Janki.
Yeah.
Amazing work, very inspiring.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Raja.
Thank you.
One question. It looks like all your pencils drawing is done by using mechanical pencil. Is that right?
Of late. In the past, I used other pencils. Never a wide range, but usually a number 2 pencil, because that's what I could find around the house easily.
Oh, that's good to know. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Raja. Totally enjoyed your show. And I also grew up in Calcutta. Totally enjoyed those Alpana painting and Alpanas, really. And
thank you, Asha.
Thank you. Actually, got goosebumps seeing your mom's painting.
Portrait, right? Yes, I was waiting. I was waiting for Raja to show that, because I had seen that.
Really got a goosebumps to see that. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Okay, with that, we will take one last question just to make sure we cover everything, and then we can close the demo. Any last question?
I'm going to turn off my screen share then.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you, Radhi. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Raja.
Thank you so much. That was a great
Thank you.
demo.
Oh,
Thank you so much.
You're most welcome. Thanks. Thank you for inviting me. Really appreciate it.